Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make a pumpkin cranberry bread. This is really a pumpkin cake that we're going to bake in a loaf pan. It is so flavorful and it's buttery sweet. And then, well, you don't need to. Today we're going to frost it with a cream cheese frosting. So the first thing you will need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a loaf pan. That's a 9 by 5 inch or 23 by 13 centimeter pan. And I'm going to butter it. So what I did is just melted a little bit of butter, and then with the pastry brush, I'm going to brush the bottom and the sides. If you don't want to do that, you could just use one of those non-stick vegetable sprays, either one. But this adds a little more buttery flavor to our bread. There we go. So now, for the batter. If you have an electric stand mixer like I have here, use your paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer, or really you could mix it in a bowl with a wooden spoon. Like I said, this is like a cake batter. So the first thing you will need is a half a cup, which is 113 grams of butter. Have your butter at room temperature. I'm using unsalted butter. I prefer the flavor. You could use salted. So I'm just going to beat this just on medium speed just to get it nice and creamy and smooth. Okay. And next, I'm going to add 1 cup, 200 grams of granulated white sugar. And as always, scrape down the sides and the bottom of your bowl as much as you need to make sure all your ingredients get mixed together. So now I'm going to beat this on medium-high speed until everything gets really mixed together and we get some air into the mixture. So a couple minutes. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. Nice and light and fluffy. So now we're going to add 2 large eggs. Have your eggs at room temperature. And I'm going to add them one at a time. Just beat one in and then add the next one. And I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract for flavor. Second egg. Okay, so scrape that down. And then next we're going to add, we're making a pumpkin bread, so we are going to add 1 cup, which is 225 grams of pure pumpkin puree. Now I am just using the canned pumpkin puree, and when you buy it with without the spices added. If you can't find pumpkin puree or you want to make your own, just go to the joybaking.com website to the pumpkin cranberry bread, and then in the head note I do tell you how you can take a regular pumpkin and then just roast it in the oven and make your own. But I find the canned is really good. So I'm going to add this. Now, we're adding a lot of liquid. We have the eggs and all that. So you will see some curdling of your batter. Do not worry. Once we add that flour, it's going to smooth it right out. Okay. So now, in a separate bowl, I have 1 2/3 cups, which is 215 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And then to that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of baking soda, a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of baking powder, and a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of salt. I like to use the kosher salt rather than the table salt. I find the kosher is a little milder flavor, but you could use table salt. Now, if you used salted butter at the beginning, then I would just leave out that salt. Now, Pumpkin has like kind of an earthy flavor, so to go along with that, I think it kind of complements the flavor of the pumpkin. I am adding a half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ground ginger, and a quarter of a teaspoon of ground cloves. Of course, you could vary that, or you could add some nutmeg in there. Some people don't like cloves, you could leave that out. So you don't have to exactly use those ground spices the way I did, although I think it's pretty good. So just whisk everything together. You could sift it as well. Just you want to make sure everything's mixed into the flour. And of course, pumpkin cranberry bread, we do need cranberries. I am using fresh cranberries today. You will need 1 cup, which is 110 grams of fresh cranberries. You could use frozen. And then I've just kind of coarsely chopped them. Now, of course, sometimes fresh cranberries or even frozen are hard to find. You could use dried cranberries. And for those, this is a good recipe. You could use other dried fruit. You could use chocolate chips, nuts. You could just leave out that part. It's a really nice flavored bread that you can kind of play with and change the flavors of it. So I'm just going to add my flour and all those chopped cranberries. We got a little pumpkin there. And then I'm just going to mix until everything's all combined. Okay. Now I know a lot of people are have a problem with when you use nuts or fruit that it kind of sinks down when it's baked. The one thing with this is a really thick batter. I do not find that the cranberries sink, but of course if you coarsely chop them too, that helps with anything, with nuts or anything, so it's not in too large of chunks. But this is a really thick batter, so you shouldn't have any problem with that. So I have a little flour on the side. I'm just going to mix that in. And this bread freezes very well, so you can make it ahead of time. Okay. And smooth the top. Sometimes if I'm not putting a frosting on this bread, I kind of sprinkle the top with pumpkin seeds. So, kind of a little festive looking there. Give you options of what you can do if you don't want to follow this exactly. So now, everyone's oven is a little different. I find this bread takes, I'll give you kind of a range of 55 to 65 minutes. I do like to, when I put it in, about halfway through baking time, I like to turn my pan just to make sure you have even baking. So it will rise, turn a beautiful golden brown, and a toothpick inserted into the center will come out just clean. So 55 to 65 minutes. Okay, so our pumpkin cranberry bread is done. So put your pan on a wire rack. As you can see, it rose very nicely. Toothpick inserted into the center, comes out clean. So what I'm going to do is just let it cool on the wire rack in the pan for about 10 to 15 minutes, and when we come back, we will take it out of the pan. So now, to take it out of the pan, just take like an offset spatula or the knife, just run it. Make sure it's not sticking. Then flip it onto our rack. There we have it. Now, I'm going to let this cool, and then we're going to frost it with a cream cheese frosting. If you don't want to, then you can just serve it like this. So we'll just let it cool. So now for our cream cheese frosting. Again, you can use your stand mixer with the paddle attachment, a hand mixer, or in a bowl with a wooden spoon. So you will need 4 ounces, which is 115 grams of full fat cream cheese. Have that at room temperature. And then you will also need 2 tablespoons, about 30 grams of butter, and have your butter at room temperature. So I'm just going to put that in there. And I'm going to beat these two together. I want to make sure there's no lumps and it's nice and creamy and smooth. Okay, that looks good. Just gonna scrape. And now for flavoring, I'm adding a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of pure vanilla extract. And then you will need 1.5 cups, which is 180 grams of confectioner's sugar. You may know that as powdered or icing sugar. And you do want to sift it because it does tend to have lumps. So if you have an actual sifter, you can use that. I'm just using a strainer here. Okay. And add that. And then we're going to beat this. You want to start it on slow speed so it doesn't kind of come up in your face. And then I'm going to switch it to medium-high speed, beat it for a minute or two. I want to get it all really mixed together and nice and light. Okay, that looks good. Now, if you found, you want this of spreading consistency, so you want it pretty thick. If you found it too thin, you could add a little more sugar. If you found it too thick, you could add like a little bit of milk or cream. But this is what you're looking for, just, you know, nice and thick to spread it. And as I've said at the beginning, you do not have to put this frosting on the bread. It's very good on its own, or with a little butter slathered on there. But, you know, I think this really finishes it off, both in looks and in flavor. So you can spread it just on the top in a kind of a thick, which I'm going to do, or you could just, like, you really could frost the sides as well if you want. And you could sprinkle some toasted nuts on the top or some pumpkin seeds. Okay, so there we have it. You can fuss as much as you want. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. Now you do need to store this in the refrigerator. It will last probably about 5 days in the fridge, or you can freeze it as well. So, let's see, I can do a slice here. It's a little warm, but there, you can see that, the pumpkin bread and then the nice cranberries and then the frosting. I think it's a very nice, it's a colorful cake bread. So, gotta have some of that frosting. It's buttery and rich, and then you have that nice warm pumpkin flavor that's accompanied with the ground ginger and cinnamon cloves, which adds to that. And what I like is then you have this like little jolt of flavor with the tart, tangy cranberries, and then of course, while you don't need the frosting, I think that the tanginess of the cream cheese frosting just finishes off this cake really nice. So try it. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.